I can tell you it is shameless, but it really is sincere. I was chatting with actually my wife, and I was talking to Matt, who's on our team here, and just I really, if there's one thing that's true about COVID, it is a reminder of how important it is to get together in the same room. I mean, you and I just got back from spending a week together in the UK, and we talk literally every single week. But something changes when you're actually there in person, in the flesh. So I would just say to everybody out there, if you don't have that kind of community, if you don't have that kind of group, you're missing it. Whether you realize it or not, you're missing it.
Hey everybody, welcome to Business Lunch Podcast with your hosts Ryan Deiss and me, Roland Frasier. We are excited to get with you guys today. And how you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing so great. It's we're
not doing so great.
Well, no, we're in that awkward. We're in the final stages of prepping for Get Scalable Live, which is our big annual event that we do, and we're kind of in that. It's always tough because everybody waits until the last minute to get their ticket. So I know it's going to be, amazing. I know it's going to be awesome, but it's like this lull between when you first announce it, everybody's like, yay, I'm excited. I definitely want to be there. And then there's kind of this lull where you see ticket sales start to, dip. And I know this. I mean, you and I have been running events for over a decade. So I know that it's the case, but it's one of these things where you're like, hey, everybody, this is going to be awesome. Because I do think, I was thinking back to COVID and COVID times. And I remember getting off one day when it was just all back-to-back Zoom meetings, which I think is what kind of characterized all of 2020. And I just remember thinking like, God dang it, I'm so freaking over this. We need to get back together with other people. And I think especially for entrepreneurs, we don't have a lot of places that we can go to hang out with other entrepreneurs, people who are like us, where we can brag, and people will clap for us and applaud us, or we can just whine and complain, and people will empathize with us because we can't do that with our normal friends. You can't brag because if you have any level of success, they think you're being arrogant. You certainly can't complain because you live in the big house, and so I just think it's so important for bootstrapped entrepreneurs in particular to have a place where they gather. It seems like funded startups do this really, really well. Certain industries do it pretty well. But I do think that it's vital that entrepreneurs get together. And I know that's that. So I'm very excited. We've got our event coming up. But I do hope, shameless plug, getscalablelive.com. If you're a bootstrapped entrepreneur, want to grow from 10 million to 100 million, you should definitely be there. And ticket prices aren't going up and hotel rooms are being sold out. So that is a way of answering your question of how I'm doing while also shamelessly plugging our event. What do you think, Roland?
I think you did a fantastic job. I like it. And I appreciate shamelessness, especially when it's in my friends and business partners.
I can tell you it is shameless, but it really is sincere. I was chatting with actually my wife, and I was talking to Matt, who's on our team here. And, I really, if there's one thing that's true about COVID, it is a reminder of how important it is to get together in the same room. I mean, you and I just got back from spending a week together in the UK, and we talk literally every single week. But something changes when you're actually there in person, in the flesh. So I would just say to everybody out there, if you don't have that kind of community, if you don't have that kind of group, you're missing it. Whether you realize it or not, you're missing it.
I like it. Speaking of that, that's a good segue into what I would like to talk about. I received an invitation yesterday, and obviously I'm super flattered that I received an invitation to join a paid group of people that were getting together. I qualified, Brian, so suck it. No,
they're going to let you in. Just to be Mastercard discovered. No.
It's like in. Oh gosh, what was the movie with Jim Carrey? I think it was Yes or something like that. And the guy's like, I can get you into this very exclusive club, and he's like, what is it? It's like Sam's Club or Costco or something. He's like, I can get you a card, I can get you in. But I got this invitation and I sent it to you and said, what do you think of this? And what it was I think it's called Sidebar or something like that. But it's a peer group that is put on by one of the newspapers or one of the media properties in San Francisco. It seems like it's more localized to that, so I'm not sure why I received it, but maybe they're expanding. There are lots of groups like this. There's one from long ago. I don't know if they're still around. Alternative Board, and several of them. And I just
Vistage, EO, YPO. Yeah, I mean,
well,
there's.
no, not really those because they're
Oh, so
not.
what's different? Then tell me what's different, because I was kind of lumping them all in the same basket. What's different about these particular groups?
Well, it's I know EO has groups like the ones that I've usually been to have been the larger meetings to speak at. I know that they also have smaller groups of like 10 or 12 people,
Yeah.
and but the focus of this particular one was, hey, the magic is in having a board of directors. They said board of directors. I think that's kind of scary as a recovering attorney because directors
Boy,
have
no doubt.
liability and advisors don't. So I would always rather be on a board of advisors than directors. But the pitch was basically you definitely do better when you have a board of directors, and therefore we are putting. But it's hard to find peers to do that, so we're facilitating the putting together and we're facilitating the meetings. And the meetings are virtual, and so it's basically just paid Zoom meetings with the facilitator, with people connecting you to people that apply and somehow get curated into this group of similarly situated entrepreneurs. And so I sent it to you because I know we have a program that's like that, that's part of our founders board, and I'd love for you to talk about it because when you and I were putting together the 7 levels of scale for Scalable, one of those levels is have your board of advisors. I think that's level 4, and it
Level
is
five.
very very.
Yeah.
That's number 5. Okay, it
Yeah.
got demoted, but I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think that it's something that's worth talking about for everybody here because you guys might be getting invitations like this too. You might be thinking about groups like YPO. You might be thinking about Founders Board. You might be thinking about Sidebar. Um, what is the advantage of a group of people who are there to advise you if they have a vested interest, which typically a board of directors does because they have some level of equity or options in a company? They're generally going to pay attention. You're curating them yourself by getting, say, a financial person and a legal person and a couple of well-connected people in the industry and maybe a well-connected person outside the industry. And that's what typically makes up a board of directors. A board of advisors, they typically are not, and the board of directors actually elects the officers of your company. So they're going to vote and choose, they're going to approve major initiatives, they're going to approve like a sale of the company or major acquisitions, things that are beyond the scope of what the CEO is allowed to do. So they actually have power. And if you get a bad board of directors or if you lose control of the board, you can actually get booted out of your own company. Just ask Steve Jobs and a whole bunch of other people.
Yeah.
So I think understanding that difference is important for everyone. But then it gets to what do you do to put one together? And so I'd like to talk about that. First, I'd like to get your opinion on these different groups. What do you think of the I don't know as much about YPO, but I have spoken to very small groups at YPO that are kind of like groups of people that hang out. They're not directors, they're more just like in this subsection. EO, I know, has, I think they call them forums, which is the
Yep.
smallest segment that then they get together with 10 or 12 people. And Sarah Blakely, who's spoken at our events and whatnot, has been a member and continues to be a big fan of that and says good things about it. And then you have these just boards like Sidebar and Board of Advisors, and I think the one that you were in, which escapes me right now, Vistage, was that what it was?
Yeah, and Vistage is very much like an EO. And both EO and YPO have forums that are the small group kind of deals, and then they will also have the larger, big events. And Vistage is that same way. I mean, they broadly categorize, and I love the first big distinction, which is the one you made that I think is really important, is the distinction between a board of directors, who these are people with actual legal entity-based responsibility. They can fire you. They're the boss of the CEO, and advisory boards. So let's set aside board of directors. We're really talking about what does it look like to have a board of advisors. And when it comes to a board of advisors, that can be varying degrees of formal. So a formal board of advisors, and you see this a lot with funded companies, this is where somebody that they're given in some cases a small stake of equity. It might be a quarter point or even a half a point. I've seen in some cases in the company to be an advisor to the CEO. So they don't have any legal liability or responsibility from a governance perspective. They're there just to help the CEO. And I think that these can be really great if they're formalized. And oftentimes it's the investor and the CEO that's going to pull those together. So that's kind of a formal board of advisors. Then what you have might be an informal board of advisors. And this is where just you as the entrepreneur, you as the CEO are saying, I want to go around and ask people, hey, are you open to me talking to you from time to time? Basically, if I have questions, kind of reach out to you. And you're essentially asking for people to serve in some type of mentorship advisory capacity in a mostly informal basis. Now, that's something that everybody can do if you have the network. Now, a lot of people don't already have that network. They don't know a lot of people in kind of who are at their level or ideally just a little bit above where they've been that they can tap, where they have that relationship, where they can make that ask. That's where masterminds come into play. And masterminds are typically paid entry. There's some level of qualification. And to access this mastermind, what you're really getting access to here is other people who are at your level or a little bit above so that you can form those relationships. Now, these masterminds, they also take on a number of different forms. So there are large group masterminds where there is a leader ahead of the program, somebody who's leading that mastermind, who's saying these are the things that matter. They're helping to curate the meetings and things like that. And then there are peer-led masterminds. And that really is what the EO, YPO, what a lot of these, they're peer group masterminds.